I would like to introduce our first speaker for our spring series, Father Mark Doherty. And our topic for today is Masculinity and Femininity, the Beauty of Complementarity. So Father Mark is the parochial vicar at St. Peter's in San Francisco. He's a chaplain of the Sacred Heart Cathedral Prep. He's got his bachelor's in history from St. Louis University and master's in philosophy from Fordham University. He also has a bachelor's of sacred theology and a master's of divinity from St. Patrick's Seminary. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Father Mark to first pray for us, and then I'm going to hand it over to him.
I'm going to say a short prayer that the Lord might bless our time together, our conversation and reflection. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, source of all providential care, we ask that you would kindly upon us in this time of reflection and conversation, and that by the merits of your Son's passion, death, and resurrection, you shed an abundant portion of your Holy Spirit upon us, to enlighten our minds, that we might come to know more clearly the ways of your divine providence, and to warm our hearts, that we might come to know more deeply how cherished we are in your divine Son. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, and rekindle in them the fire of your divine love. Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created, and thou shalt renew the face of the earth. All glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. As it was in the beginning, is now, and it shall be, world without end. Well, I'm very glad to be here. Very glad to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about the theme of masculinity and femininity. Of course, the theme is very, very broad. And so coming together this evening for a topic like this, each and every one of you might have a bit of a different idea as to what it is we might talk about tonight. I have a few ideas in mind of what I thought might be relevant to talk about. But then, of course, we'll open it up for the question and answer session. And if there's an element of the theme of masculinity and femininity that I haven't addressed in my talk, you're more than welcome to pose a question, and I'll do what I can in trying to respond adequately to your question. And so we'll have a question and answer session following the brief roll call. The theme, of course, is very relevant, and Pope Francis thinks it's a very relevant theme because if you follow the news at all, you know that today and last Wednesday, Pope Francis dedicated his weekly audience to the masculinity and femininity. These two Wednesday audiences, today and last week, are kicking off a new series of catecheses for the Holy Father on the theme of marriage and family. And so naturally, if the Holy Father thinks it's an important topic, then we should probably think it's an important topic as well. So it's providentially coincident that we come together tonight to talk a little bit about this theme of masculinity and femininity. Of course, however, before plunging into any given theme, we always have to try to take stock and become more aware of the context in which we're engaging a given conversation. In order to better understand the parameters of the conversation, we have to understand, well, what's the current climate? What's the context in which we find ourselves trying to explore the theme of masculinity and femininity? And maybe more than many other themes, it's especially important given today's kind of fervent atmosphere around the subject of masculinity and femininity, that we try to take real careful stock of what are some of the underlying ideas, some of the underlying themes that encapsulate a lot of today's conversations about masculinity and femininity, that in some respects are maybe not so helpful to a more authentic examination of the theme. I'd like to point out just a few very important themes, kind of ideas that have traced their way into contemporary society that in some important respects are doing us a disservice in trying to come to a better understanding and appreciation of masculinity and femininity. These ideas and themes go back centuries. Some of them we can trace all the way back to the 14th century, to a Franciscan philosopher named William of Ockham. But in many respects, the ideas that I'm thinking of that have gone a long way to shape our general culture's ideas about life and reality really trace their way back to the 17th century, with figures like Galileo and Rene Descartes and Francis Bacon, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and some other folks that come in their stead. The first thing that stands out that we really need to be aware of is that our current society, since really the 17th century, is characterized by a real attitude of pessimism. At first glance, it seems kind of odd because we think that we live in a modern era that's very optimistic. And true as that may be in some respects, underneath, in fact, what we have is a lot of pessimism. That pessimism is really grounded in a deep doubt about our ability to know things, our ability to examine and know reality. And most especially, it's a real doubt about our ability to know, explore, understand that part of reality which is not subject to mathematical analysis and not subject to scientific microscopic observation, experimental observation. So what we discover is that what modern men and women are generally rather doubtful of is our ability to know about the underlying invisible reality. That's going to be really critical because the impact it's going to have on contemporary society's understanding and evaluation of masculinity and femininity is that contemporary society's view of masculinity and femininity is going to be shrunk down to an observation of and analysis of just the body. The human body, as a thing, as a composition of molecules, as a composition of electrical impulses, as a collection of organs and synapses and neurons. I think what that suggests then is a very impoverished view of masculinity and femininity, a very impoverished view of the human person. The human person gets shrunk down to basically just a thing. And that's going to cause real problems. The second contemporary idea, which has exercised a significant influence on us that dates back to the 17th century in a lot of respects, and we have someone like Galileo to thank in some respects for this kind of idea, is that really the attitude that men and women have towards the material order, towards the world around us, is one of domination. The modern mindset is characterized by an attitude of domination of the material order. Men and women have the privilege, on account of their abilities, to remake the material order, the world, reality, because remember, reality has now been shrunk down just to the material order. We have the wherewithal, the right, and the privilege to remake it as we see fit. I want the material order to be this way, and the only thing stopping me is the knowledge that leads to the power that allows me to remake the material order as I want. That's going to be the second real important kind of attitudinal disposition of the contemporary mindset that affects our study and appreciation of masculinity and femininity. The third one that I'd like to point out is traced to folks like Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. And that's the idea that really when it comes down to it, the human being is not only just a material thing, the human being is not just a thing to be remade as we want. The human being is really just this individual autonomous reality. In the vision of John Locke and Thomas Hobbes, the human being is no longer seen and appreciated as a social being, as a fundamentally socially oriented being. The human being has been turned into a mechanism, a machine. Thomas Hobbes will speak of the human being as a machine that I can remake as I see fit, and that can just stand alone as it sees fit. Those three ideas have traced themselves through the past several centuries in a really profound way. And all of us here, you and I, me included, all of us have been affected by these three ideas. We may be committed Christians, we may be committed thoughtful Christians, and we may have tried to, in some respects, take a critical stance and a critical approach to some contemporary ideas. But we still have to appreciate, as we ourselves enter into a conversation about something like masculinity and femininity, that we have been affected by these ideas. They're pervasive. They're in the atmosphere. They've been circulating for centuries. We were born into this contemporary mindset. And so we have to be appreciative of them if we are to try to guard ourselves against a wayward search for true meaning when it comes to the theme of, for example, masculinity and femininity. With that in mind, then, let's see if we can take some accurate, truthful steps into an inquiry into masculinity and femininity. The first thing to note, the first thing to appreciate, is that going back into the classical mindset, to the ancient Greeks, and then very much into the Christian mindset, the Judeo-Christian mindset, reality is not just material. In fact, the Judeo-Christian vision of reality, which I would suggest is the truthful vision of reality, the Judeo-Christian vision of reality suggests that the material order is a symbol or a sign that points to, in a truthful way, but a partial way, truthful but partial, points to a greater and deeper spiritual reality. In other words, what we have in front of us in our bodies is not the sum total of what it means to be male or female or human being. Our physicalness is going to point to a deeper and essentially important spiritual dimension of what it means to be a human person, what it means to be male or female. That's a great boon because it's going to push them for a deeper, truthful, authentic understanding of masculinity and femininity. The other thing, of course, that the Judeo-Christian tradition presents truthfully is that the material order with its companion spiritual order both come from a loving, creative God who had a purpose in bringing forth his creation. And in having a purpose in bringing forth his creation, what that means is that the material and spiritual order of creation that we're now trying to explore, in some respects, here in terms of masculinity and femininity, it means that it's intelligible. It means that we can have hope and confidence, as opposed to pessimism. We can have the hope and confidence that we really can come to know things, true things, about what it means to be man, woman, what it means to be about a human being. So let's go ahead and use that as our stepping stone, our first little stepping stone into trying to explore the theme of masculinity and femininity. If we want to try to get a glimpse of the broader perspective, going even all the way down into the spiritual depths of masculinity and femininity, the best place to start is with what's right in front of us. In this case, namely the human body. Because we have the conviction, the sure conviction, that the human body, whatever else we can say about it, the human body is going to sign in a truthful way, point us to the deeper reality of masculinity and femininity. Here already we have our first mission. What we observe is that all of a sudden reality has gotten thicker, has gotten more expansive than the modern view. Because you'll notice that we now have two sets of categories already. We can speak of male and female, but we can also speak of masculinity and femininity. And the terms are complementary, but they're not synonymous. When we speak of male and female, what we are going to be speaking of is the precise bodily characteristic. This human individual is male. This human individual is female. The female and the male are rooted in the concrete material circumstances of that particular individual. But the male and female characteristics point to an even deeper and underlying reality which abides in the spiritual level. And that's where we find masculinity and femininity, such that masculinity and femininity comprise male and female, but male and female do not exhaust masculinity and femininity. Remember, the material points truthfully to the spiritual, but the material does not exhaustively explain the spiritual, because the spiritual is more robust and more expansive. That already is going to be a very important intuition, because it helps to push back against a very dominant, a very persuasive idea nowadays, which comes to us again from Galileo and some other folks, the modern scientists, who want to suggest in their materialistic view of reality that male, female, masculinity, femininity are all the same thing, and that they're constructs which we have created, and because we have created them, we can also take them apart and remake them how we see fit. See how that's a really important point? If male and female point, sign to a more fundamental, a more primary spiritual reality of masculine and feminine, then that means that, lo and behold, we can't just go around and try to deconstruct male and female. Masculine and feminine are there already. They are a priori. They are already established. And the task of the human person, the task of our community exploration, is not one to try to deconstruct the reality of male and female, but instead to try to come to understand the underlying reality of masculine and feminine so that we can understand it better and thus live more according to the underlying spiritual pattern. That's already a huge step. Masculinity and femininity are already there. They are archetypes and not stereotypes. Archetypes and not stereotypes. Stereotypes are constructed fabrications, which I can tear down. Archetypes are givens that I cannot tear down. They precede me, they come before me, and I must conform my life to them. So what is it that an initial examination of the human body as male and female can teach us about the underlying significance of masculinity and femininity? Because that's what we're here to talk about tonight, is masculinity and femininity. In a lot of ways, what we're going to see, the first thing that stands out is that our observation of male and female reveals a significant amount of commonality. That's the first thing to know, is the commonality. When I look at a male body and when I look at a female body, the first thing that stands out is how much they share in common. That's really important for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons why it's really important is because what we perceive deep down in our hearts and in our minds and spirits is that really all of us, underneath it all, are yearning for an experience of unity, of togetherness, rather than an experience of fragmentation and division. So it's a huge relief that in my initial observation of the male and female bodies, I noticed that in fact they are characterized by a significant amount of commonality. In the end, of course, what we appreciate is that complementarity, which is a lot of what we want to talk about tonight. Complementarity is really not possible without a preceding, anterior, underlying unity. Things can't go together if they don't first and foremost share many things in common. And sure enough, male and female share a lot of common physical characteristics, and so that must mean that masculine and feminine share a lot of common characteristics as well. We can take, for an example, very simple, just all very simple, the fact that both male and female stand upright. That's certainly something that sets us apart from all the other creatures, animals, and beings that we know of on our planet. And so it's very significant. The fact that both male and female are upright suggests that there is parity between male and female. It suggests that male and female, and underlying that masculinity and femininity, have a fundamental equality. There's a fundamental parity and equality between male and female, masculinity and femininity. The upright stance of male and female also suggests, very importantly, that both male and female are ordered to something higher. And that, in some respects, is rather mysterious. We'll come around to talking a little bit more about that as we make our way. But both male and female, in standing upright, seem to point upwards, whereas the other animals all seem to be, if they have movement in their being, they seem to be much more horizontally oriented rather than vertically oriented. What we observe then is that both male and female are thinking, reasoning, they have minds and spirits. The upright nature of male and female points to an underlying spiritual reality of intelligence and communication. We also notice that both male and female have many organs in common. And very importantly, not only do we share our limbs in common, we also share our hands in common. And we're going to come back to the theme of hands towards the end of our reflection. So the first thing that stands out is there's a lot of commonality between male and female, and therefore there must be a lot of commonality between masculine and feminine, the spiritual underlying archetype. But we do also notice that there is difference. There is difference between male and female as we look at the physical body of both a man and a woman. And the differences between male and female must point to some differences between masculine and feminine. But as we explore and try to understand a little bit better what the differences consistent between male and female, masculine and feminine, we always have to come back and remind ourselves of the fact that the differences are secondary to the points of commonality. The differences are secondary to the points of overlapping commonality. And as we said, very important, and it's a point worth reiterating numerous times, the fact that both male and female are upright means that they share parity, equality with one another. So the difference is not ordered to establishing domination or dominion, one over the other. It must mean that the difference in God's plan is somehow supposed to enrich and complement and reinforce the particular attributes that male and female, masculine and feminine have. So we can take the next step in our journey with confidence and assurance that what God has in store for us in our difference is not a plan for our destruction, not a plan for our suffering, but rather will somehow enrich and complement the parity and equality that male, female, masculine, feminine share with one another. So let's take a look very briefly at the points of difference. Of course, what we are aware of is that the fundamental point of difference when it comes to the physiognomy of male and female is that the male sexual organs are different than the female reproductive organs. The primary point of difference is going to be in the reproductive organs. And so the reproductive organs and their differentiation have to suggest something important, something key to the underlying spiritual reality of masculinity and femininity. So let's go ahead and consider some of what we have here. The context for this is going to be, I think, the idea that I have in mind oftentimes in my mind is I always go back to that probably the greatest passage in literature that's probably ever been written on the complementarity between masculinity and femininity. And maybe some of you are familiar with it, and if you're not, I encourage you at some point down the road to take up and read, because it's an absolutely thrilling and captivating passage. It comes in C.S. Lewis's second volume of his science fiction trilogy, in the book called Paralandra. And towards the end of Paralandra, C.S. Lewis has this extraordinarily expansive and absolutely captivating meditation on what he will call the great dance. Ultimately, what we're talking about now is the great dance that abides between masculinity and femininity. A great dance which can only take place because there's parity and equality between masculinity and femininity. But the difference allows for an absolutely rich and invigorating dance that would not otherwise be possible. So what is it that the characteristics of the reproductive organs suggest about the nature of the dance between masculine and feminine, the nature of this cosmic archetypal dance between masculine and feminine? The first thing that stands out, if we look at the male reproductive organs, of course, is that the male reproductive organs are exterior to the body. The male reproductive organs are exterior to the body, whereas the female reproductive organs are interior to the body. What that suggests is that masculinity, whatever else we can say about it, masculinity has a certain kind of exterior orientation, whereas femininity has some kind of interior orientation. The masculine, in other words, seems to be pushing out, whereas the feminine seems to be drawing in. That's going to be one of the key determining characteristics of this great cosmic dance. There is a pushing and pulling that is constantly going on between masculine and feminine. If you want to use Aristotelian terms, Thomistic terms, one which is probably not such a not the greatest idea, but for those of you who are philosophers, you might think of it in terms of this: the masculine characteristic seems to be kind of like the efficient cause, the first cause, the initiating cause. The masculine principle seems to have the role of initiation. The masculine seems to be the spiritual movement that goes out, that pushes out, that thrusts, that seeks to go out into whatever is out there to be gone into. So in that sense, the masculine is like the first cause, the initiating cause, the efficient cause, if you want to use Aristotelian terms. The feminine is more like the final cause. The feminine is more like a gravitational power. The feminine is more like a gravitational spirit or gravitational force. It draws into itself. It seeks to attract and draw in. And so in that sense, it's kind of like the final cause in Aristotle's system. The first cause pushes out, and the final cause draws back in. And what you have is this beautiful fundamental movement that takes place in eternity here, because the reality of masculinity and femininity is archetypal. It is spiritual. It goes on and on and on. It resides in God himself. So the masculine principle is going to be characterized by an outward movement, whereas the feminine more generally is going to be characterized by an inward movement. C.S. Lewis gets at this in part through a beautiful characterization of his description of the eyes of the angels that he's describing in Paralandra. C.S. Lewis's meditation on masculinity and femininity is going to be a reflection on these two angels that are side by side in Paralandra, who are both addressing the protagonist in the story named Ransom. There is a masculine angel and a feminine angel. Mind you, I did not say male and female. I said masculine and feminine. Because masculine and feminine, again, are spiritual underlying realities, whereas male and female are material. But angels, of course, have no bodies. But that angels don't have bodies does not mean that they're not masculine or feminine. Lewis will say of the masculine angel, as it appears to Ransom, that it seemed to have eyes like sailors' eyes. The masculine angel of course, they're not the real eyes, but these are the angels representing themselves to ransom so they can see them. The masculine angel's eyes are pointing outwards. They're oriented towards the horizon. They're oriented towards the distant exploratory horizon. Whereas the feminine angel's eyes are like, he says, great curtains that point inwards to a great interior world of waves and ocean lands, a great land of interior recollection and contemplation. That's how Lewis is going to try to get at it in his beautiful descriptive language. So the masculine is characterized in some fashion by a thrusting outward exploratory orientation, and the feminine by an interior gravitational orientation. Both are strengths. Both are strengths. There's not one that is greater than the other. One might say, well, if the masculine is characterized by initiation, it points to domination. But that's not really so, because of course, if you think of it, and again making reference to the male reproductive organs, the only way that the principle of initiation can even manifest itself is if it's drawn by another. I can't be an explorer if there's nothing to explore. I can't be an adventurer if there's nowhere to go. And all of us know that the way human physiognomy works and the way that the reproductive organs work is that the male organ is the initiator, but it's always only able to operate and function in response to an attractive force, to something that captivates it, to something that attracts it into its exploration, into its adventure. So there is not a characteristic of domination there. It is rather always, from beginning to end, a great dance that requires the two together. Masculine cannot be masculine without feminine, and the feminine cannot be feminine without the masculine. What point is there for the feminine to have this great force, this great strength of attraction, this great gravitation, if there's nothing to draw to it, if there's nothing out there that can be drawn into itself? They need each other. There can be no dance without duality. There can be no dance without polarity. There can be no dance without fundamental commonality set off by some kind of complementary difference. But it gets a little trickier. And by trickier, we mean something fabulous and amazing and mysterious all at the same time. Because while on the one hand we see, quite evidently, in our observation of the male and the female, that the male seems to be characterized by initiation, and the female is characterized by gravitational attraction. When we look deeper, we see more layers underneath. We see more layers underneath. What we begin to see, what we begin to appreciate as we look at male and female, is that while it's human to initiate, there's something very true, there's something very real when we say that the male and the masculine, in a lot of respects, does not come first in creation. While masculinity has the principle of initiation in a certain sense, it's also true that the male and the masculine in creation are responding. And this we also begin to see, it becomes a little bit by little bit evident as we look at the male figure itself. See, because what we see in the male figure, what we establish is that the male figure is not only outwardly directed, the male physiognomy also seems to be somehow compartmentalized, divided. It seems to be divergent, whereas the feminine seems to be rather convergent. It's interior. It draws things to itself. The question arises, this is the question that arises. If the masculine is exploratory, if the masculine has sailor's eyes, if you will, in C.S. Lewis's term, if the masculine is looking outwards, it suggests that there is something not yet complete. It suggests that there is something that is not quite fully yet at peace. And what we get at here is, I think, a very critical, deeper layer of the dynamic dance between femininity, and masculinity. The truth is, the fact that emerges from our observation is that femininity, if you were to speak of a dominant primary gender, it has to be the feminine. The feminine is the dominant gender. Female has primacy of place in creation. It is in parity with masculine, with the male. It is equal, but it does have some kind of primacy in the order of creation, in the order that we live in. The masculine, the male, has the initiative, but in a lot of ways, that initiative is going to be a response to a primary femininity. How does that play out? How does that play out? Let's look at the physical order to try to get an understanding of what we're pointing at underneath in the spiritual order. Creation is primarily female and feminine. If you think of the embryo in the womb, what is the atmosphere? What is the environment in which that embryo has come into the world? What is the environment in which that embryo is going to grow and mature from the first all the way on down the line? The embryo, the new human being, the new bodily entity, but also the new spiritual entity, is residing in a female body, in a female womb. And therefore, what we see from the beginning is that those beings, those persons, who are male, and therefore masculine, are characterized now by a journey of trying to set themselves apart from the female, from the feminine. We can see this from the very beginning in the womb. From the very beginning in the womb as an embryo, what the male embryo must start to do is secrete a whole bunch of hormones, testosterone, in order to begin differentiating itself against the female environment in which it's living. So the male and the masculine is set apart in a sense. The male, the masculine is going to be characterized by a deep need to separate and differentiate from the first moment of existence. This kind of need to distinguish to the breast. And the male child is going to spend, like the female child, the substantial part of his in the presence of the feminine. And so what will emerge little by little is that who is going to begin to assume the task of trying to differentiate himself from his mother, trying to differentiate himself from the female presence. Because what he has to do is prove himself to be male and masculine rather than female and feminine. The interplay between masculine and feminine is therefore going to be characterized in significant ways by this movement. The masculine is the exploratory gender. The masculine is the adventurous gender, in part because the masculine is always seeking to go out to find its place of safety, a place of refuge. Because the feminine ambient environment is not home. We see this being played out in the lives of boys and young men all the time. Boys and young men are externally oriented more so than girls, and they go out and kind of engage in more kind of combat sorts of activities than girls do. And this combat sort of activity is engaged in with other boys, with other males. Because through that external combat, the boy is seeking to establish his bona fides as male, as masculine. So the masculine, the male in a sense here, is going to play a very important function in trying to bring humanity, bring creation to a higher reality. We'll get back to that in a minute. What do we have with the female and the feminine, with the young girl? With the female and the feminine, what we have is there is not this conflict that sets in, as is the case with boys and the young. The young girl does not feel a need so much to separate herself from her mother because she herself is female and feminine. But what we will find is the crisis, the challenge of the female, of the feminine, is the deep need to fill the void of the womb. The deep need of the male, the masculine, is to establish differentiation. The deep need, the deep thirst of the female and the feminine is to fill the void, to fill the womb, to complete companionship, to establish the community of being. So both girls and boys, men and women, feminine and masculine, are characterized by a two-tiered dance. On the one hand, as we've already noted, our dance is characterized by the masculine initiative. Because when the masculine sets itself up and apart and differentiates itself from the feminine, it now, in its security, can turn back to the feminine and explore the inner secrets of the feminine. The masculine, therefore, is characterized by this thrusting kind of movement towards the feminine. The feminine is characterized by this gravitational pull of the masculine as it seeks to fulfill its need of filling the void, filling the womb, which in spiritual terms is fulfilling the community of relations, kind of the community of beings that the feminine yearns for. That's on the first level. And then underneath, the great dance incorporates the masculine male need to differentiate itself and the female feminine need to try to draw the boy, to try to draw the man back to it. Let's take another step. We've seen how this complementarity plays out in certain respects, but I'd like to take two more steps, if you will. One is how this plays out on the spiritual order, and then from there, how this can play out a little bit with respect to the raising and the rearing of children. Of course, what God has in mind is that male and female, masculine and feminine, reach their full maturity. And in that sense, then, we have to look for an image of what will look like in the feminine and what sanctity will look like in the masculine. And now we come back to the image of the hands. Both male and female have hands, and so it points to an underlying spiritual reality in both masculine and feminine. And here I'd like to suggest that the model of sanctity for the feminine is Michelangelo's Pietà. Michelangelo's Pietà. What is it that we see being described for us in Michelangelo's Pietà that illustrates for us the real maturity of woman? Mary, of course, is the perfect woman. What is it that we see in her that characterizes mature femininity? We see two things. Let's point out two things. What we see in Michelangelo's Pietà is that Mary's hands are open. Mary's hands are open, and they're open outwards. What does that reveal? What is that communicating to us? What is Michelangelo trying to get at there? What Michelangelo is trying to get at is this, that in Mary, of course, we find an example and an instantiation of femininity. And remember that the feminine spirit is going to be characterized in nature by to draw into itself, to take back into the womb, if you will, to fulfill the community of beings, to reestablish and fulfill relationship. But in Mary, what we see is that eros need, that need love that Mary has as a woman in her femininity, has now completely matured into agape love, into self-giving love. Because what she is allowing to happen, she is cradling the dead body of her son in her lap. But her hands are open rather than clutching. Which it means that Mary is not trying to draw her son back into herself. Mary is not trying to clutch and take back to herself in order to fill the void within her. Mary has surrendered herself to the will of the Father manifested her son's life. And in so doing, what she is trusting in, what she has faith in, this is what it comes down to. What Mary has faith in is that God the Father wants her good, wants for Mary's goodness. And so Mary has faith that in his own mysterious way, God the Father, through her self-sacrifice, through her moving into agape love, will refill her and satisfy her genuine, good, and holy, natural feminine desire for drawing into herself, for establishing communities. Mary trusts that somehow, mysteriously, God will provide, that God will respond to Mary's agape generosity and, in fact, fill her womb, fill the womb of her spirit even more plentifully than would have ever been possible if Mary herself tried to do it for herself by taking her son back to herself. Here, look at a contrasting example. Take Mary Magdalene in the resurrection scene in the 20th chapter of John. Very, very compelling, very interesting. You'll recall, Mary Magdalene goes to the tomb. She sees that the tomb is empty, and she's aggrieved because all she wants to do is minister to the corpse of her master, of the Lord. She turns around physically, and she encounters Jesus, but she thinks he's the gardener. And then Jesus calls her name, Mary. And in having her name called, Mary recognizes Jesus for who he is. And she exclaims, Rabboni. And John says she turned again. She turned, but she'd already turned. What is he getting at? And then she reaches out to clutch onto Jesus. Mary Magdalene reaches out to cling to Jesus. What does Jesus respond with? Do not hold on to me, for I have not ascended to my Father yet. It's a rebuke of sorts. But what is Jesus trying to get at? What Jesus is trying to get at is he's trying to move Mary Magdalene to the position of Mary, his mother. Mary Magdalene, in clutching at Jesus, is trying to recapture, reintegrate, re-grab the former kind of relationship she had with Jesus. She's expressing the classic form of the feminine spirit and nature. She wants to take into herself. She had a relationship with Jesus which was good, and she wants it back. But Jesus is saying, no, you must be willing to move into agape love and overcome this. And I will refill you. I will satisfy your feminine longing, but in an even better way. Go, to give you something better, a new kind of relationship. This is going to imply a real struggle, and for Mary as well. We'll come back to that. The other example of holiness is for the masculine, and that is the image of Jesus' hands nailed on the cross. That's the real image of sanctity for the masculine, for the man. The male, again, in nature, the masculine, is characterized by a need to separate, to differentiate, and to explore. But in Jesus' life to the cross, all of the ability to differentiate, to move away, and to explore has been completely compromised. Jesus has been made impotent, which is the antithesis in so many ways of his masculinity. But Jesus, like Mary, has perfect trust and faith in the Father, and that in the Father's providential, mysterious way, he can provide and renew in Jesus an even greater manhood, an even greater expression of masculinity. And that, of course, is what we have in the resurrection. So we have in the complementarity a difference in the past. There are going to be different for the feminine, different expressions of the masculine. But this is where complementarity helps us out even Because what we realize in Mary, for example, is that for Mary to get to the point where she can be in a posture of open hands and surrender her son to the Father, in order for Mary Magdalene to let go of the resurrected Jesus and anticipate the gift of a new relationship, the woman, the female, the feminine, has to be able and willing and ready to engage and embrace part of the masculine spirit. See, the spiritual journey for both female and male, feminine and masculine, is going to involve an embracing of certain elements of the opposite, of the complementary. So for the feminine, in order to become a great female saint, there is the need for the female to do exactly what the male does, which is go out, to explore, to lead, to go out and differentiate like the male, to explore and to engage in combat like the male does. The combat here of self-sacrifice, the combat of being willing to relinquish and move beyond the primary need to fill the void, to fill the womb. And in doing so, in fact, what happens on the other side is that the feminine becomes even more feminine. Mary Magdalene becomes more of a woman because she allows herself to go out into spiritual combat and relinquish and self-sacrifice, kind of relinquish that need to draw into yourself. On the other side of that combat, Mary Magdalene becomes an even greater female. She participates and shares in even deeper depths of femininity. And same for the masculine, for the male. The male has to go out and engage in combat. He has to go out and try to return to the Father's house. But he has to do it in such a way that the combat that he engages in is peaceful, that it is reconciling, that it is not an exercise in dominion or violence. And that's what we see in Jesus. Jesus has to, in order to express masculinity in its perfection, he has to be ready and willing to embrace some elements of femininity, of care, of reconciliation, and of peace. Masculine and feminine need each other in order to become perfect expression. Let's finish with a couple words on the raising of children. Because there's some of you here who are parents, many of you here hope to be parents down the line. What do some of these points imply about the rearing of boys and girls? One of the things to note is that if you're raising a boy, the life of the boy is going to be characterized more so by a real angst and insecurity, a need for him to differentiate himself and engage in this kind of combat so that he can establish himself as male and not female. Which means that there's a critical role here for the father to play in helping the boy as he gets older to prove himself and grow in confidence that he is a boy and not a girl, that he can have confidence in his masculinity as set apart from his femininity. There is also a real important role for the father to play with respect to his girls. Because as a girl grows up, what she's going to begin experiencing more and more is a need and a desire to draw and attract the masculine, the male, to her. The female, the girl, as she grows up, is going to experience deeper and deeper the need to attract the attention of the male so that she can complete herself, so that she can establish the communion of relationships with herself. She needs her father there to affirm her in her beauty. And she needs her father, especially in her teenage years, when things are pretty dicey, in puberty, to give her a substantial amount of paternal affection so that the girl does not go looking for masculine affection in all the wrong places. Girls need masculine affection. And a teenage girl needs to get it from her dad or from a trustworthy male figure who's not going to take advantage of her, so that she can grow in security and confidence in her beauty and her attractiveness without being taken advantage of by boys. And then the role of the mother. The father oftentimes is the more important parent from puberty on. But from the womb to puberty, the mother is going to be more important in a lot of respects. And this is how. Because both the boy and the girl need to learn and experience from their mothers that life and creation are good. The boy is never going to grow up to be a good explorer if he doesn't have confidence and trust that there is something good out there to explore. And the girl is never going to grow up and seek for affection in the right way if she hasn't first and foremost experienced affection in a good and loving way from her mom from the beginning of her life. Both boy and girl need to receive from their mothers, first and foremost, the conviction, the experience that creation, life is good. And that for a boy, it's worth being an explorer, and for a girl, it's worth being in quest of a relationship, a fulfilling relationship of communion with a man. Okay, so we'll pause it there, and that's kind of a wide scope, a wide kind of splash, if you will. One or another points may have been kind of relevant to what you were thinking of. Maybe what I spoke about had nothing to do with what you were thinking of. But let's go ahead and open it up to conversations and see what people have to say.
Thank you, Father Doherty. Do we have any questions? Anybody? No burning questions that you would like to ask?
Thank you for your talk, Father. I was wondering, you mentioned how the females, by following sort of the masculine route, so to speak, I forget how you phrase it, that she can become a better female. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit on how that would achieve that?
Yes. Okay. This kind of opens up onto a broader subject. What we're getting at here is that creation is fundamentally feminine. Creation is like a big house. The world is like a big house. And the house is feminine. And the house is good. Creation is good. It is a good place to be. And little boys and girls need to experience that in their childhood. However, the house of creation, as we know, is not the permanent house. The permanent and ever-fulfilling house is the house of the Father in heaven. So, in order to get from the house here in creation to the house in heaven, both male and female need to take a journey. They both need to explore. Put in biblical terms, they both need to go out into the desert. They both need to be ready to leave the land of Ur and go to the promised land. And so in that sense, the female, in her feminine expression, needs to enrich herself by embracing certain characteristics of the masculine that will enable her to go out and explore and walk the road, which will involve trial and difficulty, which will involve combat. The feminine is a communitarian spirit. The masculine is a solitary spirit. It's the loner spirit. You can see it in all, look at chimpanzees. Adolescent chimpanzees, the males, they're loners. The females are never loners. And the same goes with human beings. You have far more male men loners. Female loners don't really exist. To walk the journey, though, I have to walk the journey. No one can do it for me. I have to take onto myself this individual journey on the road to the promised land. And that, in that sense, is where the feminine needs to enrich herself with some elements of the masculine to do that. And in doing so, arriving at the house of the Father in the heavenly kingdom, she will experience and participate in the spirit of femininity all the more fully and richly than she did before setting out on her journey.
How about the flip side of whether or how a male could become more masculine by embracing femininity?
Yes. So one of the things that you notice is very important is that the more mature a man is, you notice that the more he's enriched himself with feminine characteristics. And the feminine characteristics that a male needs are the characteristics of integration. See, that gravitational pull of the feminine is a pole of integration. The female, the feminine, is more united. A woman's personality is more united, all things being equal, than a man's. Her intellect, her emotions, her inclinations, her affect, they are more one reality than is the case of a man. Men are more compartmentalized. Mind over here, emotions over here. But in order for a man to become really a man, in order for his participation in masculinity to become much more truly masculine, he needs the female, he needs the feminine through the female to help him integrate. The masculine needs the feminine to help him in the process of integration. Let's use the imagery we've been using there for a bit. It's very helpful. The male and the masculine is characterized by exploration, being out there. But in the end, heaven is the house of the Father. And the house is a house. And what does the house imply? Life in a house implies integration. It implies communication. The more mature a man is, the man is going to be able to sit down with a woman and actually have a conversation about how he's feeling, for example. What's going on inside of her. And this is what a woman needs to help a man do. A woman needs to help a man find himself in his interior. Men are exterior, which is good. But to be a human being, you need to be interior. You need to be integrated. And this is the particular vocation of a woman. She will help a man to integrate and identify his emotional life, his emotional experiences, and then integrate them into his intellectual and other kind of faculties. That's one of the key things that a man needs to do, that he needs a woman to help him do, to become more truly a man, as opposed to just a, on the couch potato. The couch potato, right? The couch potato is an immature man. You can't communicate, you can't relate, you can't have a conversation.
Thank you, Father. I just had a question about the education of the children. It seemed to me that it's matter for a woman to go out, to bring in, to attract, and for the boys to go out and explore. So when you're saying for the education of the children, for the dad to help the boy also keep exploring, but since that's a tendency that they have naturally, how can you help them since they are little also to have that tendency to, or to help them to pull in, or that complementary part, or also for the girls to explore since they are little?
That's right. So again, what's emerging for us is the beautiful dimensions of the cosmic dance. That masculine and feminine go together, and that masculine needs feminine to be truly masculine, and feminine needs masculine to be truly feminine. And it plays out in very concrete ways in children's lives. The boy, for example, needs his mother to help him begin the journey of integration. My little brother Paul's wife just gave birth to a baby boy last week, to Luke. So Luke is the new addition to the Doherty family. This is what stands out right away from the very first picture that I got from my brother. What did I see? I saw my little nephew Luke in my sister-in-law's arms. She was looking at him, and he was looking at her. That is the beginning of integration. It's this. The female, the feminine needs the masculine to do this, to begin connecting, to begin conversation. What is conversation for? Conversation is to help integration. My sister-in-law's first glance from the very beginning then is a look into my nephew's eyes. It draws the nephew into the embracing orbit of his mother, where from this point on, already in the womb it was happening, but now on, she needs to help him learn how to identify his feelings. She needs to learn him how to identify his interior life. She needs to help him integrate his personality, because boys are more bifurcated than girls in that respect. Boys are more compartmentalized, which is okay. And in full masculinity, there will still be compartmentalization, but it'll be integrated. That's what a mother needs to do. The father with the little girl. The father with the girl needs to help the girl begin to explore as well. Because while exploration is characteristic of the masculine, the female, the feminine, also is going to need to explore, because this house, good as it is not good enough. We're meant for another house. And so the girl needs to build up the courage and the confidence and the strength necessary to venture beyond the loving embrace of her mother at some point. The daughter cannot perpetually stay in the orbit of her mother. She needs to move beyond, not in a divergent way like the boy necessarily, but she needs to move on so that she can begin the journey. And she needs her father to help her, teach her, and prepare her for that journey.
What happens if a boy grows up without a mother? And my son's 18 now, and my wife died when he was 6.
Yeah.
So what things could I look for? I often thought about that. What kind of the effect is these pretty normal as in college?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Very, very, very poignant question for you, obviously, but a very poignant question for so many. This act points to the complementarity, again, of male and female, masculine and feminine, in the rearing of children. You know, children are made to be nourished and formed both by masculine and feminine. They need both. Nowadays, obviously, the crisis is much more often in the absence of fathers. That's where we're experiencing the greater kind of deprivation or privation, if you will. And that's one of the things that stands out is of masculinity and femininity are not reserved to strictly biological mother and father. Femininity, masculinity are expressed in everybody. And so in the case of a family where, for tragic circumstances, a mother has died, there are hopefully other women in the orbit of the family who can do so much in very genuine, wholly realistic, faithful and fruitful ways in assuming the responsibilities of that mothering, maternal, feminine care and nurturing. There can be grandma, both grandmothers, there can be aunts, there can be good family friends. So what reassures the heart, what does not obviously heal the wound, but what reassures the heart to some extent is that the expression of maternal love is not strictly reserved to the biological mother. There is a whole other orbit of maternal affection, which I have seen do marvelous things in the raising of children who don't have their biological mother, or nowadays, so often it's their biological father who's not around. So another man needs to step up.
Any other questions? So then adding on to that, then if you don't necessarily need a biological father and mother, then what about homosexual couples and things like that? Where they say, well, other people can be those examples. Right?
That's a very good question. Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's very germane to a lot of what's going on. We want to know, of course, be careful about what I said. I did not say that a child does not need male and female, feminine and masculine. I think what I was saying is that the child does need mother and father figures. The child very much needs paternal and maternal love and affection, masculine and feminine guidance and nurturing, each in their own respective ways, boys and girls. That's where one of the great kind of difficulties with same-sex couples will come in. Oftentimes, studies have shown, there's a study back in 2012 at the University of Texas at Austin, that in a study of several thousand individuals who have been raised in same-sex couples, same-sex families, that those individuals, both the men and the women, had suffered emotional and other consequences as a result of being, to some extent, deprived of the necessary guidance and nurturing presence of either a mother figure or a father figure. So I think what I'm trying to stress is the complementary role of masculine and feminine is very much at play in the rearing of children. Children need both masculine and feminine affection, each in their own way, boys and girls in their own way. And ideally, yes, very much ideally, that is to be done through the biological mother and the biological father, absolutely. However, in a fallen world where there are circumstances of great suffering and tragedy, and in a circumstance like this one where it's not at all the wish of the mother to not be there for her kids. There are occasions of tragedy and loss, and in those circumstances, we do everything we can to rally around and supplement and fill the gap, if you will, in every way that we can. And in that respect, I may not have my biological mother, but having my grandmothers is a big deal. That's a clear biological one. Having aunts is a clear, strong biological one. Having those very close, proximate family relations is very important.
I have a question. Do you agree that the masculinity and the femininity was mostly different from the society or the culture defined in typical ways? So how can you live a life that is biblical, but also not too different from the perception or the expectation from the society?
Okay, I'm trying to get at half your question. I'm not sure I understand the whole question. But I think maybe the question is getting at a little bit to the idea of whether masculinity and femininity are conditioned by society, are conditioned by culture. One of the points that I was trying to stress at the beginning, of course, remember, is that masculinity and femininity in the contemporary mindset are constructs that can be changed, taken down, and rebuilt as we want. One of the expressions of that idea is to say, well, masculinity and femininity are just products of given cultures, and it's the cultures and social conditioning that determine what it means to be a boy or what it means to be a girl, masculine and feminine. I just don't think that's true. The Judeo-Christian and the classical mindset takes a very different approach. The Judeo-Christian and the classical mindset suggests that masculinity and femininity are prior, are antecedent to what we do, what we build up with our own powers. That masculinity and femininity are underlying antecedent realities there from the beginning in God, and that what happens in our cultures and our respective societies is that masculinity and femininity are given unique kind of creative expressions within the range and orbit of masculinity and femininity to a better or lesser extent. Some cultures, in societies will sometimes in places seemingly do a bit of a better job in expressing masculinity and femininity. It's an uneven distribution. But masculinity and femininity are underlying antecedent archetypes rather than overlaid constructed stereotypes.
Yes, I agree.
So your question is different.
The question is extension. Basically, you can try to live a life which is very biblical oriented, so you are confirmed or conform to the way that God defined the masculinity and the femininity, but the society don't perceive in a way. So you might think you are very masculine, but the society or the culture think different way because they have their own definition. So how do you have harmony between the biblical definition and the social or cultural definition?
I see. Yes. Okay, that's a good question. Well, I think St. Augustine, the great church father, would say something to the effect of, well, my friends, we live in a fallen world, and we hope and do everything we can to establish harmony between the city of God and the city of man. And we do what we can, but we don't hold our breath waiting for perfect overlap or synchronicity. So we hope that we live in societies and cultures that do a pretty good job of representing, imaging, authentic expressions of masculinity and femininity. We hope. But if we happen to live in a culture and a society that doesn't do such a good job of it, then we try to rally around with other folks in our communities who do want to genuinely strive to develop authentic communities which express more authentic expressions of masculinity and femininity, and we do what we can. We do what we can. Try to rally around and we try to help each other out the best we can.
Thank you, Father. Last question for the night. You knew this one was coming. What do you have to say about transsexuals and people who keep saying that gays? I'm over here. Sorry. And about gays, people who keep saying that they're born a certain way, and how should we Catholics respond and act towards them?
Okay, could you say that one more time?
Yeah, like what do you have to say about transsexuals and people who are gay and saying that they're born a certain way, and how should Catholics respond to them and act towards them?
Okay, that's a very, very good question. It's a very legitimate question. I think it's a very big question. I think there's going to be another session of Theology on Tap in two, not the next one, but the third one with Father Larry Goody, who will address those questions specifically. So maybe what I'll just limit myself to saying now is that I think the two questions you have about transsexualism and same-sex attraction are both very good questions. My understanding is, I said we have to divide those questions. They're not the same thing, so they have to be treated independently of one another. What I would recommend is maybe, if you want to come talk to me individually afterwards, we can do that. But the more general suggestion is I think Father Larry Goody will be talking about those questions in a couple of sessions we talked about tonight. Might set up some discussion of those issues in the following times. So I hate to punt, but I think I'm punting. I just punted.
Thank you, Father. We have just a few announcements, but first let's give Father a round of applause. So first, at the end of the series, we have a camping trip that is June 26th through 28th, and you guys can sign up online. So your email for details from Theology on Tap, or go on the website for more details. Hi, I have a couple announcements. So the young adult group at Our Lady of Peace, we meet on the last Saturday of the month for a work of mercy. So this April 25th, we will be serving breakfast to families in need at the Villa, which is part of Envision Shelter Network. It's in San Jose, and we'll be there on Saturday morning, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m.-ish. Maybe we might be earlier. We'll be preparing the breakfast at Our Lady of Peace on Friday evening. If you'd like to help preparing breakfast on Friday or come with us on Saturday morning, come find me and I can give you some more information. Also, for young adult events around the diocese, please visit our table. We have a bunch of flyers about different things that are going on. And lastly, we're so lucky and so blessed to be here, to have this event sponsored by Our Lady of Peace. If you were here early, you got a free drink. So we're really lucky and blessed to be here. And if you'd like to support Theology on Tap, and if you have like a couple $100 on you, or maybe at home, we have a little donations jar. So if you feel called, please donate.
Okay, I have a quick announcement. So I'm Michael Scott. I'm a seminarian for the Diocese of San Jose. And I'm here to just let you know that we have 40 hours of adoration for vocations. So in the Christian tradition, we know that there are 3 vocations. And it's within this vocation like a path in life, like which freeway you're going to take. That's where you find your holiness. You are sanctified in that path. So that is married life, that is single life, and that is priest or religious. And so we invite you on, it's this Friday at 7 p.m. There's a Mass opening at the Carmelite Monastery in Santa Clara. It's a gorgeous place. An opening Mass this Friday at 7 p.m. and then 40 hours of adoration. We'll be adoring Christ in the Eucharist for 40 hours, closing at 10 p.m. on Sunday. So you don't necessarily have to have a vocation to the priesthood or religious life to come. But if you want to pray for your future spouse, for yourself, so you'll be holy enough to actually receive whatever God has for you, or if maybe you think God is inviting you to be a priest or religious, please come. And if you have any questions, come afterwards and see me.
Hey everybody, I'm Bobby Devins. I help out with Our Lady of Peace, and thanks for coming. It's awesome. So I have two things. One is in a couple weeks, May 13th is Our Lady of Fatima, the first apparition time. So it'll be happening every month for the next several months. And please come check out Our Lady of Peace for a special mass at 7:30 p.m. And then a rosary procession, which is pretty awesome, and it's a great event. And it's a good opportunity to learn more about Our Lady of Fatima and her message. Also, there's some free movie tickets tonight from Jessica. You can stand up, wave your hands. Okay. If anybody wants to get some, she's got 20 tickets, so first come, first serve. I don't know much about the movie, but it's called Little Boy. I guess it's some kind of Catholic production, potentially. And it starts at 7:30 p.m. I think it's this Thursday. Is that right? It's tomorrow. Yeah. So it's at the AMC Theater next door. So see Jessica afterwards if you'd like to get a free movie ticket. She's got 20 available. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Sister Nicopoya, and I live at Our Lady of Peace. And I'm here to announce Our Lady of Peace is going to do a mission, a parish mission, in June 7th to June 22nd. And during the mission, it's a time where we go out and we go door to door to evangelize to all of the people in our neighborhood and in the parish boundaries. So we need help just going door to door and just inviting people back to church, because there's so many people who live in the diocese or who live in the boundaries who may have been fallen away Catholics or nobody's invited them to church, or we can bless their houses. And so there's going to be probably around 40 priests and seminarians and sisters coming from Washington, D.C. to help out with the mission. So there'll be more announcements later on, but it'll be June 7th to the 22nd. And you get this great t-shirt if you go to door. Thank you so much for coming. And next time, I know we'll bring more chairs so everybody will be able to sit down.
Thank you, sister. And again, thank you, Father, for coming and giving such wonderful talk. And if you'll lead us in closing prayer.
In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Lord be with you. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, we thank you for the time together. We thank you for the gift of your Son, the gift of your Holy Spirit. And we ask that you shed an abundant portion of grace upon us, that each of us in our own way might, through the working of your divine providence, become more and more true and made us to be. All glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. As it was in the beginning, is now, and shall be. And may Almighty God bless you and keep you and guard you all the days of your life. The Father,